Hello and welcome, fellow nerds and people here by accident. I'm called David because that's my name, and this channel is called Auspol Explained because I explain Australian politics. It is what it says on the tin. My last episode was about the top 10 biggest victories and 10 worst election losses in Australia on the federal level. But what about state and territory elections? Now, there are 8 state and territory parliaments still in existence in Australia, so I'm not going to do a top and bottom 10 for every single one of them because that'll be 4 hours long. And while I am very much into Lord of the Rings, I'd prefer if this was short and sweet, like Sam Gamgee, instead of, long and harrowing like Sam Gamgee's journey to Mordor. Instead, I'll just be listing the biggest election victory for each state and territory, and then also compiling them in a ranked list. So, which Australian jurisdiction has had the largest election victory of all time? We're gonna find out. And by all time, I mean since Federation in 1901, because it gets really messy when you get into the 19th century. Like, for several decades, political parties didn't exist, so it was basically just a bunch of ideologically aligned independents, and it's not easy to categorize it in the same way. Like, it doesn't work. I'm just not doing it. Also, as the size of parliaments have varied over time, I'll be giving them both in terms of overall number of seats, but also a percentage figure, because that's what truly matters. Fun facts are meaningless unless you can quantify them to at least 2 decimal points. Everyone knows this. So anyway, the introduction will finally be over in 3, 2, 1. Let's start with the ACT. The biggest majority government win for the ACT is incredibly easy to rank because there's only ever been one majority government by a single party, and that was in 2004. Real easy to rank there. The ACT Legislative Assembly is comprised like the Senate in that there are multiple members elected proportionally for each division. This means you get a mixture of parties and independents a lot more easily than if you had single-member electorates like almost every other lower house in Australia. So in 2004, Labor, led by John Stanhope, won 9 out of the 17 seats available, which is 52.94%. While unique in the ACT's history, this wasn't much of a swing. Liberals and Greens kept the same number of seats as they did before, with 7 and 1 respectively. But the Australian Democrats lost 1 seat, and Labor gained 1 seat, which is all they needed to take them over the line from minority to majority. So it's only uphill from here. Which sounds bad. Wait, is that the right use of the saying? No one wants to go uphill. That's difficult to walk. Anyway, the numbers are going to get bigger. Number 2, Tasmania. Tasmania is no stranger to minority governments and hung parliaments, as the people in my comment section will let me know right now. Its lower house is the House of Assembly, which is like the ACT's lower house in that it is proportionally elected with multi-member electorates. It does, however, have majority governments more often than the ACT. The most recent decisive election victory in Tasmania was 2014. Liberals, led by Will Hodgman, won 15 out of 25 seats, or 60%. Labor got 7 seats, or 28%. However, the size of the House of Assembly has fluctuated throughout the years, so in 1972, Labor, led by a man with only 4 letters in his name, Eric Rees, also got 60% of the seats, but this was 21 out of 35. Liberals got 14 seats, or 40%. Eric Rees is the second longest serving Premier of Tasmania, by the way. He served for nearly 14 years in the job. Oh gosh. So while those 2 achievements are tied in terms of percentage, you could argue that Labor did better in 1972 because they won more seats numerically. Or you could argue that Liberals did better in 2014 because there were more people voting in terms of population, so they had to win over more votes. Or you could not argue at all because those are just honourable mentions, and the real biggest election victory in Tasmania was 1941, when Labor, led by Robert Cosgrove, got 20 out of 30 seats, or 66.66%. So hey, remember how I mentioned Rees was the second longest serving Premier of Tasmania? Guess who is number 1? Cosgrove. He served for a total 18.5 years as Premier. He's like the Robert Menzies of Tasmania. Yeah, this election wasn't even halfway through a period of Labour dominance in Tasmania. Labour had gained power in 1934 and wouldn't lose it for 35 years until the Liberals briefly regained power in 1969 for a single term. It wasn't until the 80s that the Liberals spent any considerable amount of time in government in Tasmania. As of 2025, the longest continuous period of Liberal government in Tasmanian history is the current one at over 11 years and counting as of recording. Spoilers to those who haven't checked out my previous episode about biggest federal election victories, but this is the point where we overtake the federal record, set in 1975 when Malcolm Fraser led the coalition to a victory of 91 seats out of 127 in the House of Representatives, or 71.65%. So everything beyond this is a bigger electoral achievement than that. And we've only just started the list. Anyway, number 3, Victoria. If you're familiar with Victorian politics, you probably think it was 2002 when Labour, led by Steve Bracks, won the biggest majority the party had ever achieved in Victoria. It was a landslide victory where they gained 20 seats in the Legislative Assembly, winning an overall 62 out of 88 seats, or 70.45%. They also gained control of the Legislative Council, the upper house, for the very first time ever. The Liberals had one of their worst ever results, with only 17 seats, or 19.31%. But if you think that, then you haven't put in the work like I have to discover that the actual biggest election victory was 1947, when the Liberal Country Coalition, led by Thomas Hollway, won 47 out of 65 seats, or 72.3%. Yeah, that's why you come to me. For all the work you wouldn't bother to have ever done ever. And why would you? Because you, unlike me, probably have a hobby. In the 1947 election, Labour's seats were almost halved. They won only 17 seats, or 26.15%. However, Hollway would soon be the architect of his own downfall. He was like, what if, instead of having the Liberal Party and the Country Party, we merge them together and call it the Liberal and Country Party? To which the Country Party responded with, no way, what are you trying to do? Eliminate us by absorbing us into your flesh like that Doctor Who villain? No. Despite such negative feedback from the Country Party, Hollway renamed the Liberal Party the Liberal and Country Party anyway. As a result, the coalition split, and Hollway spent the last year of his time in government in minority, with the Country Party as the official opposition, as they had more seats than Labour. It's the classic friends to enemies trope, but also with like John Cain standing in the corner going, I'm here too. You used to fight me, remember? While the coalition continued to exist federally, Victoria wouldn't have a coalition agreement for decades. The two parties would go on to compete against each other at elections until 1990. Number 4, New South Wales. In 2011, the Liberal National Coalition, led by Barry O'Farrell, won 69 out of 93 seats. Nice. That's 74.19%. Labour won only 20 seats, or 21.5%. Labour, which had been in government since 1995, lost 30 seats with over a 16% swing against them, which was the worst defeat of a sitting government in New South Wales history. The coalition had been ahead of Labour for almost 3 years in the polls leading up to the election. The question wasn't who's gonna win, it's how much is the coalition going to win by? Polls predicted devastating outcomes for Labour, with even one predicting that Labour would only win 13 seats. So in the end, Labour actually managed to do better than people expected. Which is technically a silver lining. O'Farrell, despite his record-breaking success, would not serve a full term as Premier. In 2014, he appeared as a witness for the New South Wales Independent Commission Against Corruption, where he was asked about a $3,000 bottle of wine he'd received as a gift and failed to declare. He originally said he didn't receive it, but then it was discovered he'd handwritten a thank you note to the person who gave it to him. He swore he didn't remember it, apologised to the Commission, and resigned as Premier. The subsequent report cleared him, stating that O'Farrell had no intention to mislead the Commission. So, oh well. While O'Farrell had an untimely demise, the coalition would not. Although they would continue to lose seats at the next few elections, they managed to be in government for 12 years straight, the longest coalition government in New South Wales history. Number 5. South Australia. In 1993, the Liberals, led by Dean Brown, won 37 out of 47 seats in the House of Assembly, or 78.72%. Labor had been in power for over a decade, since 1982, with most of that being under John Bannon as Premier. However, in 1999, the State Bank of South Australia collapsed, with billions of debt underwritten by the government. While there were 3 inquiries into the collapse and the last 2 cleared Bannon of any wrongdoing, he stepped down as Premier and didn't contest the 1993 election. Despite this, his replacement Lynn Arnold couldn't turn things around, and the Liberals won in a comprehensive landslide victory, gaining 15 seats while Labor lost 13, leaving them with only 10, or 21.27% of the chamber. This is the largest swing in terms of seat changes in the state's history. There was an 8.9% two-party preferred swing against Labor, which was a record at the time, but it wouldn't take long for a new record to be achieved, because just a few years later, at the very next election in 1997, the Liberals experienced a 9.4% two-party preferred swing against them. Labor regained a lot of ground and almost managed to become government again, but Liberals managed to stay in power in minority with the support of Nationals and Independents. Number 6. Queensland. In 2012, the Liberal National Party, led by Campbell Newman, won 78 out of 89 seats in the Legislative Assembly, or 87.64%. Labor had been in power since 1998, but with a massive 15.6% swing against them, their seats went from 51 down to 7, or 7.86% of the chamber. Interestingly, Newman was not a member of Parliament until he won his seat at that election. He was the Lord Mayor of Brisbane when he challenged the LNP leader John Paul Langbroke for the leadership in March of 2011. This meant for nearly a year leading up to the election, he was the leader of the opposition party, but he didn't hold the office of leader of the opposition because he wasn't an MP. Instead, the arrangement was that Jeff Seeney was the leader of the opposition inside Parliament, while outside Parliament, Campbell spearheaded the election campaign. Seeney would go on to become Deputy Premier under Campbell, so at least he got a reward. So Campbell wasn't just trying to lead the LNP to victory, he was trying to personally win the seat of Ashgrove off Labor to enter Parliament, which he did. Changing which party is in government is pretty uncommon in Queensland. This was only the 6th time that a sitting government had been voted out since 1915. The 7th time that they voted out a government was the very next election. In 2015, the LNP lost 31 seats. Campbell even lost his own seat too, meaning he wasn't just Premier for only one term, but an MP for only one term as well. It's also, by the way, incredibly rare to unseat a sitting Premier. Even if you manage to unseat the government, the Premier usually is safe enough to have kept their seat. Labor managed to have a huge swing back to them and formed a minority government with 44 seats. Honourable mention though to the 1974 Queensland election. A quick honourable mention to the 1974 Queensland election though. The National Liberal Coalition, led by Joe Bjelke-Petersen, won for the 7th time in a row with 69 out of 82 seats. Nice. That's 84.14%. Labor lost 2/3 of its seats, reducing their representation from 33 down to just 11. Labor's caucus was nicknamed a cricket team, and the election loss was labelled the gold standard for Australian election massacres. That is, of course, until 2012. Okay, so we've only got 2 left. Let's go to Western Australia. Every living, breathing person in Western Australia knows exactly which election this is going to be. There's absolutely no doubt about it. It is 2021. Labor, led by Mark McGowan, won 53 out of 59 seats, or 89.83% of the Legislative Assembly. The Liberals and Nationals won a combined 6, or 10.17%. The Liberals had 2 seats and the Nationals had 4, which meant the Nationals were the official opposition party, not the Liberals. The last time the leader of the opposition wasn't Labour or Liberal in WA was 1947. The two-party preferred vote for Labour was 69.7%. Nice. This was one of those elections that was just a foregone conclusion. It was just more of like, how poorly will it go for the Liberals? So to put it into context for anyone not from WA, the leader of the Liberals at the time, Zac Kirkup, conceded that the Liberals could not win the election 16 days before election day. McGowan had a massive approval rating for his handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. The polls were undeniably in Labour's favour. And also on an anecdotal level, a friend of mine hosts election parties where we watch the ABC and admire the beautiful Anthony Green. I was the first guest to arrive for the 2021 state election party, and yet Anthony Green had already called it before I'd walked in the door. He called it in less than an hour. In 2017, Labour under McGowan had won in a landslide, picking up 20 seats and defeating the Liberal government. This was Labour's best performance in WA history until a further landslide in 2021 allowed them to pick up an additional 12 seats. Labour also, in 2021, gained control of the Legislative Council for the very first time in history. Again, very rare. It's unusual for the government to have a majority in both chambers. It's perhaps the most decisive victory in Australian history, or is it? You may notice that there is only one left. The final election on our list is almost identical in terms of percentage points, but while the overall amount of seats is smaller, you could argue it is the most comprehensive win by a single party in Australian history for a very specific reason. So, what could be more crushing than the Liberals getting only 2 seats in Western Australia? Well, let's go to the Northern Territory. The very first election for the Northern Territory Legislative Assembly was in 1974. The territory was transitioning to self-government, which would officially come to fruition in 1978. This was the inaugural step for the territory towards democratic autonomy. The Country Liberal Party, led by Gough Letts, won 17 out of 19 seats. That's 89.47%. There were only 2 seats not held by the CLP, and Labour won neither of them. Labour got 0 seats, or to put that in percentage terms, 0%. Instead, they went to independents. While Labour got 30.46% of the vote averaged out across the Northern Territory, it didn't manage to get more than 50% in any individual seat. I need to point out that besides the ACT and Queensland, the other parliaments around Australia are bicameral, meaning they have an upper house. I'm only talking about the lower house where government is formed. So like, there were more than 2 Liberals in the WA Parliament in 2021, they were just in the upper house. The Northern Territory Parliament is unicameral. When I say there are 0 Labour members, I mean there are 0 Labour members. There are none. Until the next election in 1977, when they won 6. Which is about as good as Labour would do for decades to come. The Country Liberal Party would continue to be in power in the Northern Territory almost 28 years straight, only losing to Labour in 2001. So, what do you think? While the 2021 WA election is certainly more impressive in terms of sheer numbers of seats won, there still actually was an opposition party, but the 1974 Northern Territory election, though smaller, had a near monopoly of power to the Country Liberal Party as the sole political party in Parliament. So let me know, which one do you feel counts as the bigger victory? And there you have it, that's the list. Those are the biggest election victories on a state and territory level. Where does your state or territory rank in the list? And do you remember that election? Did you vote in it? Let me know. For some states, that's going to be pretty likely for some of you. For some states, that's going to be almost impossible. Shout out to all the 100-year-olds in the comments section. Let me know if you are nearly 100 years old. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all those things that help me out and help other people learn about these kinds of statistics, because this is what matters in life, sharing statistics with the people you love. or contributing to my Patreon, which you can do by clicking the link in the description if you want to just give me a little bit of money to thank me for all the hard work I do producing Auspol Explained. Thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon. I'm incredibly thankful for what you do. And that's all. I'll see you next time.